Hey everyone, it's time for another live look at the astrology. My name is Katie Sweetman, and this is your look at the astrology for March 20th through 26, 2023. We've got a lot going on this week. Sorry for the late start, but sometimes the dog is barking, sometimes got to get things done. But we're here now, and if you're watching live, as always, do say hello and do tell me where you're watching from. My Sagittarius rising just loves to kind of connect to you all around the world. And as you know, every week we gather live to look at the astrology, and you hear me say that the astrology is 50%. You are the other 50%. Doesn't mean that the astrology part sometimes isn't challenging or feels like a lot of things are moving around, but we do have a lot happening this week. I think I even said that last week. Why? Well, let's go back to last week. We were wrapping up Pisces season. It was the end of the astrological year. We were sort of newly with Saturn in Pisces. We're sort of getting the lay of the land, and here we are. We're on the verge of Pluto going into Aquarius, and I can't underestimate, or sort of, can't think of the right word, how big a shift this is. And I know we're going to have to see, because it doesn't happen very often that Pluto changes signs. The last time Pluto changed signs was 2008. Yes, 2008. That's been 15 years, and Pluto has been traveling through the sign of Capricorn for the entirety of that 15 years. Pluto is a force of transformation, evolution, awakening. But first, that's the thing about Pluto, first, Pluto has to hold the mirror to us. Pluto shows us what is in the way of our evolution, our transformation. And so from a collective level, we've had to do a lot of work in Capricorn over the last 15 years. But now the story is going to shift towards Aquarius. We'll talk a little bit about what that means when I go through each of the 12 signs. I go a little bit more into Pluto and Aquarius. It's a big topic. That's why I'm doing a webinar next week on March 29th at 8 p.m. Eastern. So yeah, you can sign up for the webinar in my show notes or go to my website, empoweringastrology.com. So yes, Pluto and Aquarius, which means Pluto, as we speak, is at the very end of Capricorn. We have to sort of tip our hat to the fact that this has been 15 years in the making. What have we learned? Hopefully lots. What else is happening? Now the sun is in Aries as of, I think, like 45 minutes ago. I can't remember the exact time. And it means we're in not only a new season, but we are in a new astrological year. Yes, in astrology, the year starts with the sun's arrival in Aries, not January 1st, as we typically celebrate with our normal calendar. But this is to talk about the symbolic journey that we all make through each of the 12 signs. And we were wrapping up Pisces season, which was the end of the zodiac. It's about preparing for the new, releasing the old, going within. Pisces is a water sign. It's about feeling, intuition, dreams, but even getting into that deeper existential material that Pisces is known for. But now the sun's in Aries, so we can sort of celebrate this new beginning. We can plant our seeds, but I would wait until tomorrow's new moon. We'll get to that in a moment. Yes, we also have a new moon. And then finally, I know there's a lot, finally Mars gets out of Gemini. It's been, as a Mars-ruled sign, I'm a Scorpio. As a Mars-ruled sign, it's just been a really sluggish time with Pluto, Mars and Gemini since August 20th. That's a long time. So here we are, 7 months later, and as we speak, Mars is at 28 Gemini. It will get into Cancer later this week on the 25th. That will be a bit of a shift for Aries season. It's like we get this hit of Gemini before we go into Mars and Cancer, which is a very different energy, which we'll talk about. So if you're watching live, say hello. I see some familiar faces. I know some of you are my clients. You watch every week. For those that don't know who I am, my name is Katie Sweetman, and I'm an astrologer and psychic medium located here in the New York City area, and yeah, just across the river in New Jersey. But yeah, we gather live every week. So let's dive into what's going on this week and how we can start to anticipate some of these major changes. How are you all feeling, by the way? Pluto, I don't know if is it Pluto at 29 degrees of Capricorn that feels super weird, or was it the sun at the end of Pisces that felt super weird? It's just like this heavy, it's just me, this really heavy energy. Yeah, let me know how you're feeling. It's big astrology, which we'll talk about, of course. So let's start with the astrology of this week, and I will kind of add about Pluto in Capricorn. And I've been thinking about Pluto a lot yesterday, and it occurred to me that this is a little bit personal share. My ascendant degree is a little technical personal share. My ascendant degree is 22 degrees of Sagittarius. So Pluto crossed that degree. It was around the 1st of January 2005. I know, 2005. So because of how my chart is built, is what's called a Pisces chart. I told you this can be a technical share. My first house is very wide. My first house goes from 22 Sag all the way to 29 degrees of Capricorn. And so Pluto has taken from January of 2005 all the way to now to get, I think it's the 2959 is my second house cusp, to get to the second house. And even from a whole sign perspective, Pluto going into Capricorn in 2008 was massive for me. And I can really look back and appreciate, this is why I'm sharing it, because I want you all to go back and hopefully appreciate what has been the story since 2008, or in my case it's really since 2005. 2005, when Pluto crossed my ascendant, I had just moved to New York City because I'm from the Washington, D.C. area originally. Placid doesn't sound so placid. Placid is a house system. But yes, I'm originally from the Washington, D.C. area. That's why when I go visit my dad when he's sick, I have to go back to Maryland. But I knew my destiny laid elsewhere, and I moved. Long story short, I moved kind of not really knowing anybody. I just sort of felt this huge pull to move to New York City to remake myself. This is before I knew astrology, but not on the level of Pluto and transits, and boy oh boy did I remake myself in New York City. And I can look back at the person I was. I mean, of course I was just had turned 26, so it's there's a difference in age, but I can look back at the person that I was in the beginning of 2005, and it's like night and day. So Pluto through the first, maybe it's technical for those who are studying astrology, is the need not only to remake your life, but remake your relationship with power and agency and transformation, to like stand on your own 2 feet. And I had to stand on my own 2 feet over the last almost 20 years. So yes, Pluto can spend like 20 years in a sign. It will spend 20 years in Aquarius, but for me, it'll spend 20 years in the first house of my astrology chart. So yeah, that kind of struck me. I was like, wow, look at everything that I've done and built over the last 18 years at this point. As some of you know, I used to be in IT. That was my day job, and then I quit my day job to do this, and to do this in March of 2019. So that was another thing I was thinking about. I left my day job. My last day at my day job was the 1st of spring, today, but 2019. I know it's been 4 years, and coming up on June of 2019 is when I started to do Facebook Live. So here we are all this time later. But yeah, let's these are the things that I think about, really looking back at how things have shifted and transformed, for me and hopefully for you too. So let's look at the astrology of this week of March 20th through 26th, 2023. There's a lot of twos in that. But yeah, let's start with the beginning of this week. The sun has arrived in Aries. Happy birthday, Aries. I'm sorry I didn't say that already. So much going on this week. I didn't want to forget you, of course. So the sun has crossed into the first sign of the zodiac. It is the 1st of spring here in the northern hemisphere. For our friends in the southern hemisphere, it is the 1st of autumn. So the equinox, which is what today is as it hopefully sounds, equal day and equal night. For those of us in the Northern Hemisphere, going forward, we will have an increase of light. That's one of the reasons why it's now daylight out. As I do this, the clocks changed last week in the United States and Canada. But for those further afar, I know that the clocks will change in a week time or more. So yeah, we are now going into more light. This is sort of this archetypical duality that exists in creation. And we have this day of balance of light and dark. And then we experience the light, and then we get to the summer solstice, 21st of June, and then we start to go back towards the darkness. And then we get to the darkest day of the year, the winter solstice, December 21st. And so it's this sort of cyclical dance that we all do. And I realize, of course, if you're in the southern hemisphere, it's the exact opposite. But for those of us here in the northern hemisphere, it is the first of spring. And for a lot of ancient traditions celebrated this as the start of the calendar, the new year. I know like it's Persian New Year, for example, Zoroastrians, which is very ancient religion. But yeah, it's the astrological new year. So as we go sun into Aries, we're still in the old astrological, or we're still in the old lunar month. So you might know that we started the lunar month 4 weeks ago. And then tomorrow, the 21st of March, we're going to have an Aries new moon. So that new moon's going to be at 1 degree, so just right into the sign. And I think that's really our start of the new year, because we get that big hit of energy. It's a new moon, it's new beginnings, it's moving forward, it's taking action. That is what Aries is all about, is the first sign of the zodiac. It is about individuality. Again, standing on your own 2 feet, desire and motivation. We need Aries. You'd be surprised how many people they need that new beginning. And it's like, well, you need Mars, you need fire, you need to go after what is in your heart, what lights you up. So this is a season for us to realign with the things that really get us motivated, that get us animated. I realize it's not always so easy, because maybe we're burnt out. Maybe we're missing that spark, missing that fire. So maybe use this new moon to really relight your fire. This new moon in Aries, it's going to pick up on Mars and Gemini. Yes, our old friend Mars and Gemini, where it's been since August. But this is Mars's last hurrah in Gemini, at least for another 2 years. So this is a new moon that's really capitalizing on the energy of Mars and Gemini. Aries is fire, Gemini is air, so we get that sort of combustible energy. It's about new ideas, new visions, new actions, new choices. And maybe we've been waiting all this time, 7 months, Mars and Gemini, to be able to really move forward on the things that we've been thinking about, the things that we've been contemplating. I think that's one of the hardest things about Mars's time in Gemini, is that it's been in this long square with Neptune. And so the choices and the action that's not been so, pointed, it's been a little bit slowed down, it's been a little bit confusing, or maybe we've had to really reflect and to look at how we use our Mars. Do we use our Mars? Do we not use our Mars? Sometimes we're afraid to use our Mars. We're afraid to assert ourselves. We're afraid to stand up for ourselves. And here we are at the end of Mars's time in Gemini. What have we learned? And how does that inform the choices going forward? As an aside, this is not the only Aries new moon that we're going to have this year. In fact, the next new moon, this will be April 20th, is the second new moon. Typically, it doesn't happen that way, but it just so happens that we have 2 back-to-back Aries new moons. The thing about the April 20th new moon is that it's a solar eclipse. Yes, we are coming into eclipse season. This new moon officially means that we are a month away from a solar eclipse. So this eclipse is going to bookend this new moon that we're going to have tomorrow on the 21st of March. And so whereas this new moon is all like newness and moving forward, the solar eclipse that's on the 21st is the sun is at 29 degrees of Aries. And so 29 degrees, it's like the energy of Saturn. It's kind of why I feel Pluto at 29 right now is just really heavy. When we get the energy of Saturn, the bar is set higher for us. We have a higher sense of integrity, a higher sense of leadership. Saturn is sort of Saturn-like energy is saying to the eclipse a month from now, yes, it is about moving forward and taking action, but it has to hit a higher bar and a higher level. The other thing that's going to be different between that new moon and the new moon tomorrow is that Mars will be in Cancer by the time of that new moon. So it'll be a very different energy. Gemini is all mind and curiosity and choice and trying everything and options. And Cancer is much more driven by the heart. It's much more driven by the things that it can really put its heart and its soul in. It's Mars and Cancer people are really good advocates. They really fight for the people they love, for example, or even the causes, depending on where that Mars is, the causes that they love. So it's a very different energy. And I wanted to put the eclipse on our radar because we are a month out from a solar eclipse. It means things are going to start to get a little interesting. Those eclipse energies can manifest before. It could be the moon going through one of the cardinal signs. It could be something else, Mars going to Cancer, that really activates that eclipse energy. So sometimes we see the eclipse before the eclipse. Happens all the time. That's the thing about eclipse energy. For me, it's fascinating. It's that it really shows us that time, although linear, it has this sort of interesting non-linear quality to it, because how something like a future astrological event can manifest before. So yes, we are going into eclipse season. That will be lots to talk about in the future. And then we get to the main event for this week. It's Pluto in Aquarius. So as I was saying in my introduction, Pluto has been in Capricorn since January. I believe it went into January 2008, and then it was back in Sagittarius in June of 2008, and then it was back into Capricorn in November of 2008. And over the past 15 years, yes, 15 years, Pluto has demanded, and I say demand because even though the astrology is 50%, the other 50% sometimes makes big demands. Pluto is an evolutionary planet. What does that mean? In astrology, there are 3 in total. There are probably more than that, but these are the 3 that I can really dig into. Like, for example, they keep finding planets in our solar system. Another conversation for another time. But for me, Pluto, like Neptune and Uranus, these are modern planets. They're just discovered by telescopes, for example. They weren't known to the ancients. They talk about the evolution of consciousness. Consciousness personally, consciousness humanity. This is something that we've seen over the last 200 odd years. The world has been quickly changing. Maybe it's a coincidence that all these new planets are getting discovered. Maybe not. I don't know. But we are now beyond the confines of Saturn, which was the last planet that the ancients could see. It's the last planet that's visible to the naked eye. So Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto, they're trying to reveal something that's typically hidden. Pluto, what does Pluto do? It holds a mirror to us. It helps us to see the different facets of the soul. It helps us to see our blind spots. One of the ways in which I give an example about Pluto is that, especially on an emotional level, Pluto shows us an emotion that we're not owning. For example, let's say you were like, oh yeah, I never get angry. Nothing bothers me. And then you keep attracting people with anger problems into your life. And that's, in a way, Pluto showing you like, hey, actually you have all this pent up rage and it needs to be expressed. But here is the avatar of this pent up rage. Yes, Pluto can work like that. Wherever Pluto is, and it can be 15 years, 20 years, sometimes it will spend 2 years transiting a planet in your chart. If you are a Capricorn or a Cancer, you know exactly what I'm talking about over the past 15 years. That area of your life has to profoundly transform. It is a work of consciousness. It is different for each and every person. Wherever Capricorn is in your astrology, and I have an article on my website called, it's even in the show notes, Pluto and Capricorn, sign by sign. So you can get a little refresh of what area Capricorn has been working its way through since 2008. That part of your life looks likely very different than it did in 2008. It could be finance. Maybe you had a very different relationship with money and the material world at the start of 2008, and then here you are. There's been a deep work to know your own value and worth, to really be able to create material stability and security. Pluto does work on an emotional level, on a psychic level, so it's trying to show you on the unconscious level what has been in the way of you creating stability and security for yourself. For example, now it's going to start to go into Aquarius, where it has not been since the 1780s and 1790s. Nobody alive, of course, nobody alive has been around to experience that transit, and I really caution us about looking at the history, because humanity in 1780s and 90s were very different. The structures of power were different. How our relationship with technology and industry was radically different. So it's really, I don't think we can use history or historical events as a metric for Pluto's time through Aquarius. But what I can say is that part of your chart, yes, Aquarius is some part of your astrology, will begin to shift. Here's the thing. Pluto goes into Aquarius on the 23rd of March. It will turn retrograde in Aquarius on May 1st, and then it's back out of Aquarius and back into Capricorn on June 11th. This is our 3-month preview. This is the only time Pluto is going to be in Aquarius in 2023. Pluto will then go back to Aquarius in January of 2024. It comes back into Capricorn in September of 2024, and then it's back fully into Aquarius on November 19th, 2024. So we're in this period of transition. We are wrapping up a 15-year chapter and preparing for a 20-year chapter. We are 1 foot in a new life, 1 foot in an old life. We are sort of seeing something close out, but then something come in. It is important for us to pay attention to the shifts, the stories, the archetypes, the themes that are starting to present themselves as we go throughout, the last couple weeks of March, April, May, and then back into the first 2 weeks of June. Also paying attention to what's happening around the station of May 1st of 2023. It's not to draw any conclusions. It's not to come to any hard and fast opinions. There's no way we can truly do that, because we don't have the luxury of zooming out on a 20-year transit and knowing what exactly it means. But what we do know is that whatever our pre-existing relationship with the Aquarius part of our astrology has to change. Saturn was in Aquarius from March of 2020 until March of 2023, March 7th of 2023, has been giving us notes. If something was out of order and out of balance, you did the work. Hopefully you did the work over the past few years with Mars in Aquarius. And then here comes Pluto to sort of capitalize on this work. It's not to say that it's going to be the same. These are two different planets, and they express themselves in very different ways. But it does mean that you now have the opportunity to go more deeply into the work of transformation. It's just sort of titrated out, so to speak, on a much longer time frame. So we go through the signs in a moment and see where does Pluto in an Aquarius activate. It may sound like a very familiar place because you have been getting intimately familiar with that part of your life over the past few years. Again, it's not going to be the same. It's just going to be different. And then this is a little bit of a technical note for those that do know their astrology. You have to always look to where, in this case, Pluto was when you were born. Where was it? By house, by sign, by aspect? Again, this is technical information because there is a resonance with the birth position with what it's doing now. So if you have Pluto in the 10th, Pluto goes into Aquarius, and then it's always going to sort of echo back to career, power, your ability to be powerful in the world, or to use and to wield power in the world, for example. That's not the only thing that's happening this week. As I talked about earlier, Mars is finally going into Cancer. It does that on March 25th. Mars typically spends about 6 weeks in a sign, very different than Mars in Gemini's 7 months because we don't have the retrograde. Mars from a traditional standpoint, is not at home in Cancer, but that's not to say that it can't do its work. Mars is about action, drive, motivation. We would say in traditional astrology, Mars is in its detriment in Cancer because it's in its dignity, it's in its exaltation in Capricorn, the exact sign opposite. It's because Mars can't build and construct as it normally would like to. It doesn't like go after what it wants. Typically here, it has to be led by emotion. It has to be led by the heart. And so it's a time where we're really identifying our desires, our motivations. But Mars in Cancer is very driven by emotional stability and security, to create home and family, to protect home and family. Maybe we're going to be a little bit emotional over the next 5-6 weeks, but it does add a different quality to Aries season because Mars rules Aries. So I'm sure we will sort of continue to talk about this in next week's video because, again, it's so much. I can't even remember what was going on last week. It was also so much, but yeah, here we are. So let's look at the astrology for each of the 12 signs. I just recommend that you also listen for your sun and your rising. Listen for both. Maybe you feel more the rising or the sun sign. You know, that's up to you. But I think that I feel that it's both. So let's start with Aries. Aries, so where is Pluto moving into? We have to understand where Pluto has been. And Pluto has spent the last 15 years in your career sign. It's such a vast time that it really does take some reflection in the sense of like, how has your professional life shifted since 2008? How has your relationship with power changed? And in some cases, I remember having this conversation with clients. There have been these distinct themes about power and standing in power and maybe dealing with a boss or somebody that was in their orbit using power in a destructive way. That said, this has been a different thing for Aries. For each person, I guess is what I'm trying to say. You have to really sort of identify the individual story over the last 15 years. So Pluto has been at the end of Capricorn for the past few weeks. What have you learned? Maybe it's a bit soon to say because Pluto will come back into your career sign 2 more times in 2023 and 2024, and it will finally leave in November of 2024. That said, Pluto is making its first dip into what's called your 11th. The 11th is the last, almost one of the last, it's the second to last sign in the personal astrology or your personal astrology calendar. And that part of the chart, it's a bit vast. It's not about the personal, it's about the collective. It's about friends, community, society, humanity. I realize these are big, broad themes. All you have to do is go back and look at one of the story arcs, or story arcs plural, since 2020 when Saturn was in this space. Who are your friends? What are your relationship with your community? Pluto's a bit of a different animal, but it's still sort of telling about an act or sort of a process of transformation that's happening in a part of your chart that talks about these big, broad strokes. Where do you belong? Who are your friends? Who are your tribe? How do you make connection in the world? Every Aries is going to live this differently, but it does speak to this larger shift in your relationship with society, humanity, the collective, social issues, social themes, social causes, and even your relationship with community over the next 20 years. I almost said Cancer, that's not right. Taurus. So we got, this is a big shift for you. I know Taurus, you're fatigued at this point, but for Taurus, Aquarius for you is your career sign. And that's a space that Saturn laid a lot of groundwork for you over the past few years. The idea was, what do you want to be when you grow up? And every Taurus answered that question differently. Maybe it's exactly what you were doing, or maybe you made some big professional shifts over the past few years. Here comes Pluto. It's hard to say how this is going to manifest because it's going to manifest differently for everybody, but this is the start of a major shift of seasons in your life. Pluto stepping into the 10th does speak to these larger themes about the world, duties, responsibilities, ambitions. Pluto can be very ambitious when it goes through the 10th. Also, what is your relationship with power? Power in the world, your ability to stand in the world and be a powerful person. Not everybody is going to, let's say, exert a lot of power in the world, but on some level, this is about power. It is also a turning point for you. Like I said, it is a major change of seasons. The last time you had this type of change of seasons was when Pluto went into Scorpio, and that was 1983 and 1984. I know, so long ago. Mars, I will also add, is changing signs, and it's finally going into Cancer. It's been, 7 months in your side of money and income, and it's really been motivating you to make some changes in money and income. That said, it is a relationship planet, and it is going into Cancer, and so this is a time, for there to be a shift in how you connect with people. Maybe it's more heart-based. Maybe there's a lot of travel and movement over the coming weeks. Gemini. So Pluto for you, it's been spending the last 15 years in a place that is not typically well seen. It's called the 8th. And I think it's important at least to mention that and go back to 2008 and sort of this arc that you've been on since 2008 of doing a lot of deep emotional work. And for you to reflect on the changes in your emotional health and well-being, your sense of who you are, the sense of your unconsciousness, and even the self-destructive patterns that maybe were once with you 15 years ago that are not with you at this point. Because Pluto leaving the space, and it will go back a couple more times, it's a huge shift, although maybe not in a way that's measured like the other signs. But for you, with Pluto going into what's called your 9th, this is a time where you need to start to figure out what you believe in, what you stand for. So this might sound a little bit familiar because this is the same space that Saturn occupied from 2020 to 2023, up until March 7th of 2023. Saturn laid a lot of groundwork for you, and it really did speak about these deeper existential questions and themes that have been on your mind and your heart and maybe even your soul since 2020. I think the difference between Saturn and Pluto is that Pluto is going to be more actionable. Yes, Saturn was really trying to get you to build a framework of what you believe in, what you stand for, your sense of faith and truth and meaning in the world. And then Pluto is like, all right, now we're going to make some bigger transformations. It's one thing to say that you believe in something. It's another thing to actually live it. And Pluto talks about the bigger emotional material and the shifts that need to happen in order for you to really truly stand in what you believe in. Maybe you don't know what you believe in. Here comes Pluto to clear whatever is in the way. That said, I will quickly add that Mercury, your planet, is now in Aries, so this is a little bit more of a faster paced time. Mercury was picking up a lot of the energies in career and Pisces, but this is a time, especially over the next couple of weeks, for you to look ahead, for you to think about friends and community. What are the things that you want to happen in the new year? And if you are a Gemini sun sign, of course, we're starting to get closer and closer to your personal season. And this is for you to start to lay the groundwork for the coming year. Cancer. So let's go back to 2008, and maybe you are all different ages. Maybe you were much younger in 2008, or maybe you were still an adult, and you can say, no, I remember well what was going on in 2008. Every Cancer, of course, experienced the last 15 years differently, but what the common theme has been, it's been about relationship. Pluto went into your relationship sign in 2008, and on some level said, I'm going to start ripping everything out. And what began was a decade-long process of gut renovating how you connect with people. Yes, this includes relationship, capital R, for those that have been in long-term committed partnerships or marriages, but even small r, relationships. And it means different things to different Cancers. But if there's a story where you haven't fully been able to, be in a relationship without having somebody take power from you or run you over, that's been a huge shift. hopefully, the past 10 plus years for you to really be able to stand in relationship and to have somebody in your life that is hopefully a positive influence at this point. I've seen Cancer risings get into major relationships, positive relationships that were really the transformation, or the result of all the transformation work they were doing on themselves way back in 2008. That said, now Pluto's going to start to go in your 8th. I know you're thinking, wait, Katie, I just left the 8th. You did. You left the 8th. This is different. Saturn and Pluto, two different planets. Saturn going through the 8th, it's much more constructive. Pluto is an evolutionary force. Now something on a deeper emotional and spiritual level has to completely transform. This is an arc, a much greater arc in your life, and it's going to be in the background, but this is where March, April, and May, and June are giving you some material to work with. Pluto is very powerful. Pluto can transmute. It can completely transform. And so if the past few years with Saturn and the 8th really gave you a vision of the emotional framework that you've been working with, now here comes Pluto actually giving you the power to change it. That said, Cancer, Mars is finally getting out of Gemini, and it's going to go into your sign. And this has been a little bit hard, I think, the past 7 months, because Mars has been languishing in what's called your 12th. It's been a little bit behind the scenes. Maybe you've been tired. Maybe you've needed to rest and prepare. But Mars in Cancer starting March 25th is a breath of fresh air. Maybe not air, because Cancer is a water element, so it's really going to start to motivate you, give you action, be able to move forward, but also going to activate a lot of deeper emotional material. Leo, so Pluto changing signs is a big deal. If you could see a chart in my head, the way that I see the chart, here's you, Leo, and then Aquarius is what's called your relationship sign. It's the sign that's exactly opposite you. So here comes Pluto. It walks into your relationship sign. It will spend 3 months there, and then it will walk back out and go into Capricorn. Let's first reflect on what has Capricorn been over the last 15 years. For you, Leo, Capricorn is health and wellness. It's your relationship with your body, how you take care of it, how do you take care of your day-to-day life, how do you run and organize your life. Look at your life back in 2008, your relationship with health and wellness, your body, how you take care of yourself versus now. Do you see a change? Hopefully a positive change. Pluto's also really gotten you to be in your body, especially for those who have a history of being really disconnected or even disassociated with their physical life. That said, Pluto going into the relationship sign harks a new season in your life that's focused on relationships, all relationships. This is going to mean different things to different Leos, but what it means is that it's a time for you to really transform how you connect with people. Saturn through Aquarius 2020 to 2023 gave you a lot of notes. And if you are afraid of connecting with people, if you are isolated, or if there's any patterns, that's the thing. This is the difference between Pluto and Saturn. Saturn's time. Saturn's more constructive and building or reconstructive. Pluto looks at the emotional, psychic, and unconscious patterns that are there. So that's the level that we're working on over the next few years. I mean, for everybody, but for you, this is really centered on relationships. For some Leos, this could be the start of a major relationship and something that reflects a lot of the deeper transformation work that you've been doing in your life. For other Leos, this sort of capitalizes on a lot of the work or a lot of the realizations that you had while Saturn was there. For some Leos, it's the end of a relationship, but then again, Saturn was also in this space. Or maybe it's giving you the time to really transform existing relationships. Again, it's hard to say because every Leo is going to be different. Mars finally getting out of Gemini. It's going to go into Cancer, and I just want to quickly mention this because for you, Cancer is your 12th sign. This is 5-6 weeks to go within, to reflect, to rest, to recuperate. Typically when Mars is in the 12th, we don't have a lot of energy. You have to understand that the 12th represents a time when we all have to rest. We all have to prepare for the next life. We all have to connect with our spirituality, for example. Can't always push forward, Leo. And maybe you could use this recuperation because it has been a bit of an intense few years. You've had Uranus and Taurus. Now you're going to have Pluto and Aquarius, and Saturn's out of Aquarius. So you need to really get into the deeper parts of yourself. Virgo, so your planet Mercury is finally into Aries, and for you, Aries is your 8th sign. So this is all coming off of this time where there was really focused on relationships. Saturn's now in your relationship sign, and it's going to be in your relationship sign for the next few years. You can go back to previous videos where I talked about what that means. That said, the Aries new moon, also Mercury in Aries, really focuses on your deeper emotional material, trust, intimacy, vulnerability, opening up to somebody, especially opening up to somebody in a relationship. Mars, which is one of the planets that's driving the energy of this new moon, it's in your 10th, career. And maybe this is there's this connection between the duties and responsibilities that you have in the world, but also the deeper emotional, can I trust, can I move forward, having to face your fears, with the stuff that's happening in the 8th. The 8th is where we are tested by life. We all have to go through the 8th. This is just your time in your personal zodiac calendar to go through the 8th and to really do the work and to confront yourself. That said, let's go back to Pluto. Pluto is wrapping up 15 years in what's called your 5th sign. This has been a 15-year process of completely transforming your relationship with yourself, how you express yourself, your relationship with your talents, gifts, and abilities, and your sense of identity, and maybe who you thought you were in 2008 and how you express that versus how you express that now is night and day different. I think when I was saying this, when I was talking about Leo, we have to understand the level that Pluto works at. It doesn't work on a day-to-day level, typically. It works on a psychic level, an emotional level, a spiritual level. It's trying to show you the patterns, the stuff that's in your blind spot, the stuff that's in your unconscious, so that it can be transformed and reformed. So what was in your blind spots about self, identity, creativity, talents, what has shifted over the past decade plus? Now Pluto is going to make its first dip into Aquarius, a space that Saturn occupied from 2020 until just March 7th, 2023. This is going to mean different things to different Virgos. If Saturn was really, showing you how the systems of your life are just not working, they're running you into the ground. Let me give you an example. Let's say you work nonstop and you know in your mind that you shouldn't, because it's actually starting to weigh on you and you're starting to see signs that your body is not happy. It's almost like Saturn was showing you the check engine light's on. Okay, here comes Pluto. Pluto's like, no, you have to make the changes. That's the way Pluto works. It's this evolutionary force. And so the work is to get into the deeper material behind your relationship with yourself. Maybe you don't stop to take care of yourself because of all these other deeper emotional patterns that Pluto is going to help you transform. Maybe you made a lot of positive changes in health and wellness, or you made different, you really changed and refined that system over the past few years, and then Pluto is here to give it a new power source. What does that mean? When we run from a destructive power source, that is what our life runs on. When we change that, and Pluto gives us an opportunity, then now the power source can be constructive. It can be transformative instead of destructive, for example. But something about your day-to-day life, your relationship with your body, may look very different over the coming years than it looks right now. Libra, so your planet snuck into Taurus last week. I'm saying snuck in because there was so much going on that it's like, oh, right, Venus went into Taurus. For you, Taurus is what's called your 8th sign. Am I doing that right? Yes, eighth sign. And so over the next few weeks, you're really getting into, especially with Uranus there, the work that you've been doing since 2018, 2019 to really open up these deeper things around your emotional state, how you trust, your relationship with vulnerability, even into your emotional blind spots, for example. That said, let's go back to 2008. That was the year that Pluto arrived in what's called your fourth home and family roots and foundation. Pluto said in 2008, Libra, I'm gonna start to rip everything out. If there is a lot of psychic patterns and emotional material around home and family and ancestors, Pluto has spent the last decade getting you to completely excise it. Because this is the part of the chart that's meant to support us. It's meant to feed us, to nourish us, and to support the entirety of our life. And so it's difficult if patterns around mom and dad and their mom and dad and their mom and dad, etc., has been really eroding or creating a difficulty in your base, in your foundation. Go back and look at home and family 2008 versus now, or even your home environment, and it hopefully looks very differently. Then Pluto starts to go into Aquarius, and it's going to pick up on some of the breadcrumbs and the notes that Saturn left for you while it was in Aquarius from 2020 until 2023. This is the time when you have to really step into yourself. What does that even mean? There's 8 billion people on this planet. There is only one you, Libra. And Saturn has been trying to tell you that the last few years. Take yourself and take your talent seriously. To be in yourself is not a mental construct. It is a feeling. And so Pluto is going to try to show you over the next decade plus what is in the way of you actually being in the full power of you. For some people, it's a look at our self-destructive tendencies. Hey, we're humans. We all have our blind spots, our self-destructive tendencies. And so Pluto actually wants you to powerfully transmute that. For example, this is all to clear away anything that's in the way of you shining your light, as cheesy as that sounds. But Pluto is going to show you the power of who you are over the coming years. Oh, and I will add, Libra, because you do have an Aries new moon that is your relationship sign, and this is sort of the precursor of the other Aries new moon on April 20th. That one will be a solar eclipse, so it's really putting the spotlight on relationships for you. See how things change, especially with Mars going into Cancer on March 25th. Scorpio. Good God, Mars is finally getting out of Gemini. It has been 7 months in your 8th. It has not been the easiest time. And I know you're Scorpio that you can take it, but I think even when it's a long 8th house transit, we need to make sure that we are taking care of ourselves. That said, it's been emotionally heavy, and hopefully that will begin to change when Mars goes into Cancer on March 25th. That said, Pluto into Aquarius is a major shift of seasons. If you're old enough to remember Pluto in Scorpio 1983 to 1984, that was the last time Pluto made a similar shift of seasons. It's like Pluto in Scorpio 83, 84 was like one season of life, one season of transformation, and then here we are, 2023, 2024, going all the way into the next 20 years. This is the same space that Saturn occupied since 2020 to 2023, March 7th, 2023. So you'd have to say that Saturn has been giving you some notes. It's been leaving some breadcrumbs for you. Yes, home and family has been a huge focal point over the past few years. Maybe you have made major moves. There's been somebody moved in, somebody moved out. But it's been a time that's really meant to reinforce the power and the necessity for the base of your chart to have the support that it needs. There's a reason why the four angles of the chart are the 4 pillars of life: self, home and family, relationships, career, and responsibility, because without them, things have a hard time supporting themselves. It's been a time for you to really get into your roots, whatever that means for you. Scorpio means different things to different people. But Saturn, again, has been giving you notes, and there's been a lot of changes and transformations over the past few years. So here comes Pluto. What does it mean? I'm not sure. Pluto works on a very different level than Saturn. Saturn's very constructive. Pluto works on an emotional and psychic level. If you saw some things about home and family, the past and parents and ancestors, that it's in your roots and it's time for it to come out, okay, here comes Pluto. And over the coming years, that needs to be excised. Maybe you haven't really allowed yourself to fully come into this lifetime. It's been hard. Maybe there's trauma. Well, here comes Pluto to really pull you into the roots of your life. Again, this is going to mean different things for different Scorpios, but this is a powerful shift of season, a powerful change of the axis of your life. And it's for you just to make notes of what is happening between March and June 11th, while Pluto is in Aquarius, because it's going to go back, and it's going to go back in 2024. Anyway, so again, Mars finally changing signs on March 25th, but this is a big week for you, Scorpio. Sagittarius. So Sag, Pluto is coming out of your money sign, and I think it's worthwhile to see what has shifted with money since 2008. Whether it's literally the property that you own, the money in your bank account, or the money that you make, but I think Pluto really wanted you to get into the deeper material, self-worth and value, and any sort of emotional or psychic patterns that have been in the way of you creating material stability and security in your life. Maybe there's been wealth to be had during this time, or maybe it's been a time to really, get into the nitty-gritty of money and material life over the past 10 plus years. That said, Pluto is going to go into Aquarius, and it's going to occupy the space that Saturn occupied from 2020 to March 7th of 2023. Saturn gave you notes. It gave you notes on the power of voice communication, how you think and listen and learn, and even the choices that you make. And it means different things for different Sagittariuses, but maybe for some of you it meant teaching and really coming into the power of your voice and the authority of what you have to say. Well, then here comes Pluto. And Pluto, it works on a different level than Saturn. It's really getting into the deeper emotional and psychic material around voice. My joke about voice is like, don't be in a cover band in your own life. So here comes Pluto to be like, why are you singing somebody else's song? Why are you using somebody else's words? How do you get into your voice? And your voice, it is not a mental construct. It is something to be felt. And over the next 20 years, yes, 20 years, you are really coming into the power of your voice, but also working to either transform or excise anything that's in the way. And even to get into the power of your mind. And maybe you don't think you have, something to contribute or something to teach or something to say, but then here comes Pluto. This is a time to also, it does highlight choice, and maybe it's much more of a macro point, really getting into like your relationship with the power of choice. Capricorn, aren't you glad, Capricorn, that you're not going to have Pluto in your sign anymore? So yes, 2008 Capricorn, Pluto arrived in your sign, and it stayed for 15 years. Now, Pluto will come back into Capricorn 2 more times. It's to wrap up the transit, but I think at this point, it's to really reflect on the person you were, the life you had, where you were in 2008 versus where you are now. Pluto will never, apart from the next 2 times it goes back in, it won't return to Capricorn. This is the time that your life needed, your soul needed to do a lot of deep transformation work. That said, Pluto's going to go into your second sign of money and income, a space that Saturn, your planet, occupied from 2020 to 2023. This is going to mean different things for different Capricorns. Saturn gave you notes. Saturn showed you things. Saturn left you breadcrumbs. And here comes Pluto. So if Saturn really got you into the nitty-gritty of your financial life, your material life, then Pluto is going to get into the emotional and psychic material behind it. What is your relationship with value and worth? What is your relationship with money, income, property, resource? How much of that is dictated by self-worth, insecurity, fears, vulnerabilities? That is Pluto's purview, is to really get into the psychic material that is behind all of that and to transform it. So again, every Capricorn is going to live this differently, but it's for you just to watch and to see what is the story that's starting to emerge March, April, May, and June, especially around the station of May 1st, and how that starts to give you some advanced material that then Pluto will finally come back to in November of 2024. Oh, I will say at Capricorn is that Aries season. Aries is your fourth, home and family. A lot of things happening in the home environment, roots and foundation. So that's to see what's going to shift, especially as Mars gets into Cancer later this week. Aquarius. So Pluto has been in your 12th sign, so it's been doing stuff behind the scenes, not in the same way as, let's say, the other signs. But when Pluto crosses into Aquarius, this is the only time in your life you will ever have Aquarius. It is in total a 20-year chapter. Yes, 20 years. What we can say is that who you are now, the life you have now, I know these are big statements, and then by the time Pluto is done in 20 years, will look very different. It's hard to say how this will shake out, how this will shape, how this will shift your life, but it will have a powerful effect. It is a little bit of a different transit, Pluto going into Aquarius, sun sign versus Pluto going into Aquarius by rising. By rising, this is the start of a major new season in your life, and one where on some level it's about really transforming anything that's in the way of you fully inhabiting your power, your authority, your individuality. Pluto in sun sign Aquarius, it's in the sign of the sun. And so it's this transformation of your relationship with identity, self-expression, the ego, but even the light of who you are, again, means different things for different Aquariuses. All I do know is this is a powerful shift of seasons, regardless of sun or rising, and something that's going to play out over a long period of time. And I would look to Saturn's time in Aquarius, 2020 through 2023, for any notes or breadcrumbs that were left for you. It's not to say that it's going to be the same, because Pluto works on a very different level than Saturn. Pluto gets into the emotional, the psychic material, the patterns, the fears, the insecurities that are in the way of us being able to express something. It's an evolutionary planet. Its job is to get you to grow and evolve by any means possible. That said, with the Aries new moon for you, Aquarius, this is the time to really focus on voice, communication, how you think and listen and learn. It's really picking up on these larger themes about individuality, self-expression, creativity. And so it's a little bit of a fast-moving new moon for you. So maybe especially with Saturn or Pluto changing signs, it's really things are going to start to move in your life. Pisces, last but not least, Pisces. So Pluto, it's going into what's called your 12th. The 12th is the last sign in anybody's personal astrology, and the 12th is the most hidden, quiet, spiritual, liminal space in the astrology. It represents the world that we can't see. So here comes Pluto, and it's going to start to occupy a space that by definition you can't see. So for you, and this is going to be a little bit different than the other signs, it's happening on an unconscious level, or it's happening on a deep internal level that most people, and sometimes even you, can't see. Pluto is trying to show you your blind spots. It's trying to get you to excise or to break down anything that's in the way of you connecting to your higher self, your spirituality, your deep inner faith, truth, and meaning. But it gets into the psychic material. Now, this is the same space that Saturn occupied from March of 2020 until the beginning of March of 2023. Maybe it's worthwhile to go back and to look at the notes and the breadcrumbs that Saturn was leaving you over the past few years. What is your relationship with spirituality? What is your relationship with peace and letting go? What is your relationship with the unconscious? Are you mostly ruled by the unconscious? A lot of us are. It means that we're doing things without even realizing that we're doing them or where they're coming from. It's just on autopilot. But Pluto is trying to get you to connect to your higher self, your higher wisdom, and your higher guidance over the next 20 years. I know, it's a long time. But for you also, I will say that with the Aries new moon, the sign of money and income for you, so this is the time to really take a lot of these new beginnings because Saturn's now in your sign, and to really start to focus on making them real, getting into themes around value and worth, what is important. Your planet Jupiter has also been in Aries since 2022. So money and income, value and worth are already big themes for you. there you go. That is a lot to cover, and I try to squeeze it all in. Thank you guys for being patient with me, but that is your look at the astrology of March 20th through 26th, 2023. Join me next week. I'm sure we'll have lots to continue to unpack. Follow me online at empoweringastrology.com. I'm on Facebook, Instagram. I'm also on Spotify, YouTube, all the things. Sign up for my newsletter. I always put out information first thing on Monday mornings if you want to jump on the week. And I hope to see you all next week for my Pluto in Aquarius webinar, when we get to nerd out on what Pluto in Aquarius is going to mean for us. And yeah, there you go. Lots to really contemplate and think about, and to really navigate Pluto at 29 degrees of Capricorn. It's pretty heavy. But anyway, lovely to see familiar faces. Lovely to see you all. And I will see you all next week. Take care. Bye-bye.